Now, across Texas, the issue is...
I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas.
I'm Greg Grugan in Houston.
And I'm Rudy Koski in Austin, and this is Texas, the issue is.
This week, the Texas House passed House Bill 3. It would put an armed officer, security guard, or district personnel on every public school campus in the state. Now, it gained bipartisan support. I talked to El Paso Democrat Joe Moody about why it's needed.
I was part of the group of investigators that went down to Uvalde last year. And when we issued our report, we highlighted that there were multiple systemic failures that led to that horrific tragedy. One of those things was the security or lack thereof on that particular campus. Our research showed us that that was not unique to Uvalde. That is something that is a problem across the state. And so when you have multiple systemic failures, you need multiple systemic solutions. And so this is one of the ways that we need to address school safety. One bill does not solve all the problems, but it is certainly an important piece of the puzzle.
While a majority of Democrats joined Republicans in passing this, some of your colleagues did not vote for this on the Democratic side. Some have tweeted saying this is putting more guns on campus. What would you rebut that to say?
I understand their frustration. As someone who has been a gun safety advocate for the majority of my legislative career, particularly in the wake of the shooting in El Paso in my community, and after certainly investigating this crime, I get their frustration that we aren't bringing gun safety measures to the floor. I'm doing everything in my power to do that. And I have told families both in El Paso and Uvalde, I will continue to do that. That's never going to stop. So I get their frustration. What I would encourage folks on my side of the aisle to understand is it is okay for us to engage in these dialogues across the different buckets of issues in policy, kind of policy arenas, school safety, police accountability and training, access to weapons, mental health, and the provision of mental health in communities that don't have access to it. All of those things are pieces to solving the problem. And so we should engage fully in all of them and thoughtfully in all of them. Ultimately, it's the Republican colleagues of mine that refuse to thoughtfully engage on any conversation around gun safety. That's on them. That is on them, and I'll continue to hold them accountable for failing to bring that issue forward. But in the meantime, we have to address what we can when it's in front of us.
House Bill 3 would say that on every school campus, there needs to be an armed officer or security guard, or if you get into the Guardian program in Texas, where a licensed staff member or a staff member with some training of the district would be armed. How would this be funded? I mean, some school districts have their own ISD police departments, like here in Dallas, but some rural areas may use their local law enforcement. How will this be funded to ensure that every campus will have some form of armed officer?
The bill increases the safety allotment per student. In fact, when it came to the floor, it was $10, and now it is up to $100. That was an amendment that I passed on to the bill, because if we're going to require this, you can't leave our districts holding the bag. That is not a responsible way to do this.
When this session is all said and done, will you personally be proud of the reforms that would have become law at the end of this session in reference to Uvalde and mass shootings? Or do you think at the end of the session, there will still be a lot left at the table that both sides couldn't come together on?
If we don't raise the age to purchase these high-powered weapons, I think we've failed our communities. And I will say that directly and bluntly. If we do not do that, that is an abject failure. And it means that we're turning a blind eye to a very real problem and a solution that is pretty straightforward and simple. So while I do think mental health, providing mental health on campuses, fantastic. I have a bill that does that myself. Doing school security is important. Holding police accountable and making sure that they're trained properly to respond to these situations, all good things. If we turn a blind eye to raising the age to possessing and purchasing these high-powered firearms, then yes, we failed the state of Texas.
Guns and school safety, still a huge topic. Rudy, what's your one word?
I initially was thinking semantics, but I'm going to go with conflicted.
Okay, Greg, what about you?
Stephen, my word is deterrent.
All right, the Fox Texas Trio will be back to discuss this interview on the other side of this break. The Fox Texas Trio is back to discuss guns, school safety. Rudy, House Bill 3 would put some type of armed presence on every public school campus in Texas. Now, some Democrats oppose this, but will this bill, if it becomes law, will it make a difference?
Short answer is yes, but unlike Representative Moody, who sponsored this legislation, co-sponsored on this, I think HB3 is a major response to the Uvalde school shooting, a major one. He may think that this session is going to be an abject failure without the age restriction bill for buying a military-style rifle from being passed. That's why my word is conflicted. I think he's conflicted on this. I think this bill is a big response, especially because it comes with funding from the state, which he added to. Remember, he added to that. And during the floor debate, it was pointed out that this was something that Uvalde teachers and families wanted. They spoke to them personally in a closed-door meeting, said they wanted this. So it's far from an abject failure, in my opinion.
This bill had overwhelming support by both parties, but a small group of Democrats did vote against this. Greg Rugen, will those Democrats be on the wrong side of history if this becomes law?
Yeah, those Democrats got this wrong. We as a society have armed personnel at banks, at airports, at stadiums, at hospitals, at governmental meetings, all as a deterrent and a response to those contemplating violence. Why should the campuses housing our most precious and vulnerable human assets be the exception? To me, it's indefensible, especially when we fully understand how much damage can be done in a matter of minutes. The experts insist that armed, trained personnel engaging with an attacker buys time. Time for students and teachers to escape, time for the cavalry to come and neutralize the threat, minimizing the damage.
This isn't a gun reform bill, but it is a school safety bill. Rudy, can something like HB3 pass the Senate and get the signature of Governor Abbott?
It certainly should, right? Now, this falls right in line with the type of response that Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is only considering. It should be noted that the Senate was the first chamber to pass a gun-type bill with legislation requiring juvenile mental health cases being included in the national background check system. The problem is that bill got some big pushback by gun rights groups, and other ideas like the age restriction bill have not even seen the daylight in the Senate, getting a Senate hearing. And during the House debate, Vicki Goodwin, state representative from the Austin area, tried to put an amendment requiring the armed school guards to have gun locks on their firearms. That's a pretty good amendment. It probably will be brought up again in the Senate because there have been several cases where kids have found guns on campuses that belong to careless school marshals and guardians. So Moody's, that comment that it's on them may have some lasting repercussions, especially for Patrick and Senate Republicans.
Greg, can this pass the Senate?
Yeah, I think it can, and I think it will. Republicans have pledged to make schools safer without reforming gun laws. This is a measure they can take back to their districts and say, we hardened your kids' school with an armed response to an armed attack, fighting fire with fire. Not to mention, we have more than enough money to fund what becomes a full employment act for the multitude of peace officers needed to protect more than 9,000 campuses across the state. Last time I checked, every law enforcement association in Texas was squarely in the red column.
Quick answer, guys. Rudy, Representative Moody says real change is raising the age limit for all gun purchasers.
Man, it's going to be tough. Minnesota tried. It got struck down. Washington State's trying. It's being challenged. Slim chance here in Texas, I think.
Greg?
Well, at a recent House committee hearing, Moody spoke with incredible commitment and candor on the topic, insisting that had the age for semi-automatic long gun purchase been 21, the 21 killed in Uvalde would likely still be alive. I think, frankly, most Texans agree.
That's all the time we have. To see this interview or any of our past ones, go to our station's YouTube channels.
And keep the conversation going with us on social media.
Join us next week as we keep a close eye on the turbulent and always consequential landscape of politics in the Lone Star State. And in the meantime, be sure and tell us what you think the issue is.